Hello and welcome to another episode of the Monday Night Wars. It is October 16th, 1995, and as always, we are live with WCW Monday Night Nitro from the Albany Civic Center in Albany, Georgia. With me is Joseph Rojas. How are you doing, Joseph?
I'm good, Scott. And last week, I think it was last week, I talked about kind of the various genders that are listening to our program. And you said that I was lying, which I was not. I actually sent you.
I've seen it. I confirm it.
Yep. So the other thing that I want to talk about this week, though, is the ages that we're having. So as of the most recent metrics, we got 12.2% in the 23 to 27 demographic, which I think makes a little bit of sense. That's a little bit younger than both of us are. They really weren't around for the Attitude Era. I kind of understand it, but still, over 10%. I think that's pretty strong. In the 28 to 34, which is kind of right in our sweet spot, we got a massive 48.6. So I appreciate that. And then 35 to 44, these are all the guys who are going to tell you it never got better after the Attitude Era. We got 37.8. That's pretty big.
I gotta stop you there, bro, because that's my demo. That's what I'm in. Are you trying to say that I'm one of those guys that said
I'm not saying that you're old, but I'm just gonna move on.
I'll just say one thing, okay?
Yeah.
It never got better after the Attitude Era. That's all I got to say about that.
See? Thank you. And then 45 to 59, we have a measly 1.4%, which you think I would be upset about. But what I'm really upset about, Scott, more than anything, is that the 60% and up demographic, we have no one. Not a single person has listened to us. And which I think is really unfortunate for both of us, because I would argue that both of us are what people call old souls. We like a lot of old movies, a lot of old programs. That's kind of our thing. So I'm going to try to market ourselves a little bit today to that demographic, and let's see if we can pull some in. So can you bear with me for a second?
Go ahead, man. Shoot your shot.
Okay. So today's unofficial and unpaid sponsor is I'm going to just go ahead and give them out right now. And I'm hoping that's going to draw in the crowd. Okay. So today's episode of the Monday Night Wars Radio Hour is brought to you by Viceroy Cigarettes. Everyone who is anyone smokes Viceroy cigarettes. Whether you're a man or a woman, you can't be seen without a Viceroy cigarette in your hand. I hope that worked.
I mean, I'm so interested now. That really did it for me. But as for the topic at hand, what we are here to do, the whole purpose of this program is to talk about these Monday Night Wars. So I'm going to get into it now. And we start off at the commentary table, and we are told that Sting is going to be Ric Flair's partner in the tag team match main event tonight. Joseph, tell me about it.
Dude, it's Sting. It's fantastic. Who doesn't want to see Sting tagging with some Flair?
But our first match, before we get to that, our first match of the night is a match that we have been teasing for weeks now. If you recall, although we haven't really seen any of it on Monday Night Nitro, I've been telling the listeners at home about it because they needed to know. And that is Johnny B. Bad versus Diamond Dallas Page for the WCW World Television Championship. There's no time because the match didn't even officially start. Tell me more about it, Joseph.
I don't know if there's a single thing about this that I don't love. I mean, it's so layered with just absurdities. This is absurd in so many great ways. So he thinks that DDP slashed his tires. The reason that he deduced that was, I believe, on Saturday night. He says, I couldn't make my match that, as you mentioned, to face Sting. I had 3 slashed tires, and I think you did it, DDP. And somewhere along the promo, DDP goes, "I never slashed your 4 tires." And then Johnny B. Bad goes, "How'd you know it was 4? I only said 3. And that's how he hooked them. And it's so absurd. And I love it because you can tell that whoever wrote that really spent time on it. Like they really were like, how do we Columbo this situation where we can get DDP to fool himself? And it's not that smart, but it's really fun. The match or lack thereof, I think, is good. I'm not normally one for, DQs unless they progress a story. And this is so clearly, these guys are going to be feuding. This is not going to be a one match situation. It's going to continue. It's going to involve Diamond Doll. It's going to involve DDP. It's going to involve Johnny B. Bad. This is where we're going. And I love that because you have Johnny B. Bad, who's not, I don't know if I would say he's like a main eventer. I really don't think that, but he's a very, very capable mid-card guy. And you have DDP, who kind of up until this point has really been lower card. He's been one of the higher lower cards, but now you're kind of drawing him into the mid card too, and you're having a really fun mid card rivalry between them. I think it starts off great. I think DDP oversells the hell out of this. I think Johnny B. Bad does a very good job of really being like, hey, this dude really screwed me up. And I think overall the segment would get a B for me. I wouldn't put it in an A class at all, but it really works on kind of every angle.
I honestly don't think this could have been better. As you said, we normally don't like this kind of stuff, these, DQ, disqualification, no match kind of things. But from start to finish, the whole thing was great. But the thing is, we're going to get that match. We're going to get that match at Halloween Havoc. They're already scheduled. That's why we didn't get the match. A really good way to sell the pay-per-view, I felt. After that, though, we head into our next match. We have Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. It's a pretty straightforward match, Joseph, so I'm going to let you handle the nitty-gritty of it, although I do have to say Benoit has a brutal power bomb in it. Other than that, I think I'll address the 800-pound gorilla in the room. We're not going to talk about Chris Benoit's backstory yet. We've discussed when we want to talk about that. It can't not be talked about. We feel like there's a natural place to discuss that, and we're not there yet, so we're not going to talk about it yet, but we will get there. And we will give you all a spoiler trigger warning or whatever when the time comes. So if you don't want to hear it, if you don't want to hear the details, you can just fast forward. But now is not the time. We have Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero. Chris Benoit defeats Eddie Guerrero, 8-minute, 36-second match. And we're told by Bischoff after the match that the reason these guys are here is because they're thinking about maybe starting a cruiserweight division. That's exciting, Joseph.
Yeah, I love this. I think first off, this is I would say still this is Eduardo Guerrero. This is not Eddie Guerrero. I know they're calling him that, but there's nothing Eddie about him. So that from when I was a child, I was a huge Chris Benoit fan. And one of the things I was thinking about while I was watching this particular match, like what really attracted me to his wrestling style. And one thing I was realizing was when he wrestles, everything he does, whether it's a suplex, chop, you mentioned, the power bomb, whatever he does, there is almost a snap to his movements. It's almost like a whip effect, and it's so good and intense. And I really don't think I've ever seen anybody pull it off since. There's definitely been wrestlers who will do something in a very powerful way, and you'll go, wow, that really was a feat of strength. But the way Benoit wrestles matches, it's almost like you don't expect the strength, and it's so quick. And I really can't describe it beyond kind of a snap or whip effect. What this match is, what the goal of it is one, as you said, for Bischoff to announce at the end of it, hey, if you liked this, we're actually looking at potentially making a cruiserweight division. I think this match is the best thing that Bischoff or whoever decided this, whether it was Bischoff or Kevin Sullivan or whomever decided that this is the direction they wanted to go. This is the best match you could have started with. Is it a 5-star match or whatever? Probably not, but it gets an A+ for me. It establishes who Chris Benoit is. It doesn't really show him as a heel or a face. Eddie Guerrero, who obviously has worked with him a number of times throughout the country as well as other countries and knows him very well. They're friends. Is a perfect person for him to wrestle with. It's a great back and forth. There's a moment where Eddie actually, I think he hits the steel post with his arm. And for the rest of the match, he sells that injury. And credit to him, he either is actually hurt or this is a masterclass in selling an injury. I really don't know which one it is. And we'll probably see next week when we watch the next episode, see if he actually seems to be banged up. But he does such a great job of making it look like this really is affecting my performance. And then Benoit in return exploits that, not in a heel way, but just in a tactical way. And it ends up kind of costing Eddie the match. To me, regardless of WCW or WWF, this match right here is by far the match of the week.
That's bold, man. That's bold. But it is a very good match. It's a very exciting moment to be alive and watching WCW Monday Night Nitro. But wait, there's more, Joseph. Call the WCW hotline tonight, $1.49 a minute, and you get to find out all the dirt about WWF. You get to find out which WWF official left the company over the weekend and how one superstar supposedly got in a fight with a fan in the parking lot and lost. The spoilers are the person that left was Bill Watts, and the superstar that got in a fight in the parking lot was Shawn Michaels. We will talk more about Shawn Michaels when we get to Raw. The Bill Watts thing, from what I've read, Bill Watts says that he was on a 3-month contract with WWF. He had no intention of staying. His contract ended. But any chance WCW can to make WWF look bad, they will. What did you think about this?
Well, the Bill Watts thing, let's cover that first because that is the first thing that he mentions. So to my understanding, Bill Watts, and this is just off of research, I think Bruce Pritchard mentions this in his podcast. And obviously, if we ever cite Bruce Pritchard's podcast or Eric Bischoff's podcast, you do have to take these things with a bit of a grain of salt. Obviously, these are the guys who are definitely going to be in the rooms in these situations, but also it is their perspective. So you do have to kind of really weigh that in how you look at things. Apparently, the Bill Watts thing, to my understanding, was he kind of believed he was going to be in charge in WWF and really be laying down the law. And he tried to. And there's various stories from different people. Kevin Nash apparently told him, and this was according to Kevin Nash. Apparently, he started trying to lay down the law, and Kevin Nash knew him because Kevin Nash obviously was in WCW prior to WWF, and he basically told him, you aren't the guy here. I'm the guy. Being Kevin Nash, aka Diesel. I'm the guy. You don't get to tell me what to do. Not in those words exactly. There's definitely a different way he said it, but it's kind of the idea. But Bill Watts seemed to be kind of trying to throw his weight around. Bill Watts had a very, I don't know if I would say legendary, but storied career for sure in wrestling. Some good, some not so good. He was a very competent promoter for a time, and I think that time had come and gone by this point, as I think it does for most promoters. I think you have a window of when you're very effective. It wasn't working out for him. It wasn't working out for them. So they kind of said, we're good. Now, obviously you gave Bill Watts' side of the story. So who's to say? We're just giving you what we know. It doesn't really matter, but it is what it is. Now, the next thing of, the fan apparently beating up a wrestler in the parking lot, it was Shawn Michaels. That is not actually what happened. So we're gonna kind of go into this a little bit in the WWF episode because they're going to go into it. So I think I'll save that for later when we get later on in the episode. But then after this, obviously it goes into the Kevin Sullivan stuff. So why don't we talk about that?
Why don't we talk about that? And what a great segue, Joseph.
Thanks, man.
You're so welcome. We now go live to Gene Okerlund, Mean Gene, who's interviewing the Giant and Kevin Sullivan. Sullivan says that after Halloween Havoc, Hulkamaniacs are going to switch their allegiance to the Dungeon of Doom. The Giant doesn't do a great job, but warns Hulk Hogan that he's going to push him off the roof in the monster truck match. He also puts his hand over Okerlund's face. Tell me more, Joseph. Tell me more.
Well, the hand over the face thing is really kind of a nod to Andre the Giant. They're still playing on the whole that he is Andre the Giant's son, because Andre did that to, I can't remember who did it to, but it's definitely happened. It may have been Mean Gene, but I can vividly see it was during their I believe during their WrestleMania 3 build up between him and Hogan. So that's kind of a nod to that, continuing the legacy. Overall, I have a note here that says Kevin Sullivan, and this is no disrespect to him as a booker. This is just the character. Kevin Sullivan cannot be taken seriously in this gimmick with his Boston accent. I just don't buy anything that he says. There's a lot of promos that we're going to come up to, especially on the WWF side, that I kind of really wanted to see what they were saying and really pay attention to it and write down a lot of notes. This whole segment is so, I don't know if I would say it's bad. It's not great. It's not even good. I give the thing a C minus. I didn't want to crush it too hard, especially because Giant is very new. So I don't want to, obviously, Paul White doesn't care what I say, but he was very new at this time. He was still learning. And overall, it just nothing in it sticks with me. Like, honestly, the hand thing, I forgot about that until you mentioned it right now, because there's nothing memorable about this promo.
And while you were saying that, I went and I looked it up. And yes, it was Mean Gene that Andre the Giant put his hand next to Mean Gene's face and then put it on Mean Gene's face. That was a callback to that, which is kind of cool in hindsight, the callback to that. I guess we're still kind of playing the Giant is Andre the Giant's son thing, I guess. We don't talk a lot about it, but it seems like it's still kind of there. But you're right. Not a great promo all around. I don't hate Kevin Sullivan. I just don't really like Kevin Sullivan as the Taskmaster. It's never really made sense that he's just kind of this evil mastermind kind of thing. You're right with that thick Boston accent. I like Kevin Sullivan when he's just being the brawler kind of guy. He's done some good matches that way. That was his gimmick. Wish he would do that. But Kevin Sullivan's the booker. And so he can do whatever he wants. And he's going to book himself and his people to the moon. And that's what we have here. But for a palate cleanse, Joseph, we need a palate cleanse. And boy, do we get one. Disco Inferno comes out and dances. But then he's chased away by Ming. What are your thoughts on this segment?
I the minute you started just being so positive, I hadn't even flipped my notes over, but I knew what must be coming because of how positive you were being. And I was right. And it is Disco Inferno. I'm not going to grade it because it's such a small segment and it goes right into a match. I don't like it, but they are doing their due diligence, and I will leave it at that.
Well, after that, we move to a real down note in the night. We have Ming versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I cannot believe what they did to my boy. Ming defeats Hacksaw in 1:51. Break down this match for us, Joseph.
I think it's a weird one. I think it was fine to have Ming win because obviously you are, Kevin Sullivan is booking, his guys as this powerhouse unit, and then they need to for the storyline. I'm not saying Kevin Sullivan's doing anything wrong with that. They need to for the storyline. I did think, Hacksaw. I mean, it's Hacksaw Jim Duggan. How are we giving him a minute for a match? I mean, he really does just get wasted, and I gave it a C because I know what they were trying to do, but I think you could have just done a squash match with a normal person in this. I think would have been fine. I think Hacksaw was the wrong person to do that with. That being said, this is Scott's boy. Scott loves him some Hacksaw Jim Duggan so much so that for I think it was for your birthday, I actually went to Hacksaw Jim Duggan's store and ordered Scott an 8x10 signed by him for Scott's birthday. And then it didn't come in for a long time. And I was getting very anxious because I was like, I know when his birthday's coming, and like we're getting to the point where he may not get it. I think it did miss your birthday, actually. And I ended up emailing them and being like, hey, I ordered this way ago. When is this coming in? You know, it's my boy's birthday. I want to make sure he gets this. I don't know if they did respond. It did finally come in. It was beautiful. And then I found out that the reason it didn't come in a timely manner was because Hacksaw was dealing with cancer. So I felt like a horrible person because I had no idea. And if I had known, I would have never emailed and I would have just let whatever happens happen. So Hacksaw, from the bottom of my heart, even though you're never going to listen to this, I am so, so sorry.
You digitally assaulted a man with cancer. Shame on you. Up next, though, Dark Hogan. I'm going to start calling him Dark Hogan. We're going to see if that sticks. Dark Hogan and Jimmy Hart do a promo. Hulk Hogan says he's like Don Corleone. And he's more powerful than any promoter on earth. Hart's worried, though. He's worried about Halloween Havoc, but Dark Hogan tells him not to worry about it because he's going to tear the Dungeon of Doom apart one by one. He also calls, which I haven't mentioned this before, but he's been doing this quite a bit. He calls the Giant big, nasty, and stinky seemingly a dozen times. Joseph, what are your thoughts on the Dark Hogan promo?
So I was really hoping you were going to mention Don Corleone Hulk Hogan, because that's exactly what he says. He says Don Corleone Hulk Hogan, which okay, just think about that film and how strategic and tactical Don Corleone is. Hulk Hogan ain't that. He ain't that. On top of that, he says now everyone knows the evil in Hulk Hogan is real. And my question to that is how? How do we know? Because there's nothing he's done. These segments would be so cool if, like, each week Hulk Hogan with the all black, evil Hulk Hogan, or Dark Hulk Hogan, whatever you want to call him. Don Corleone Hulk Hogan.
That's Dark Hogan. Trademarked it.
Well, no, it's Don Corleone Hulk Hogan. We got to go with what he said. If he each week picked off a member of the Dungeon of Doom, that would be fire. Jimmy Hart talks about how worried he is about what he's gonna do at Halloween Havoc, as in what he's gonna do to the Dungeon of Doom. He just keeps saying that he's evil. And on top of that, this is something that we just can't miss, which is that late 90s and early 2000s sunglasses are the best. The segment gets a D for me.
Even with the sunglasses.
That's why it didn't get an F.
Okay. And I don't understand all of this talk about how we don't know that he's evil. I mean, he's wearing all black, Joseph. It's so good. Up next, we have the main event. We have Ric Flair and Sting versus Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman. But what happens? Well, there's no Sting. Sting doesn't come out. He's supposed to be helping Ric Flair, but he doesn't come. Flair has to wrestle 1-on-2. Sting's suspicious of Flair. They've had a long and storied rivalry. Flair's tried to end Sting's career on multiple occasions. Can he really trust Ric Flair? Well, Ric Flair starts getting the beat down of his life. Sting decides that Ric really is in the fight of his life with Arn and Brian. This isn't a trick. This isn't a way to get at Sting. So Sting comes down and tags in. He is running wild on the Horseman. So much so that Anderson and Pillman, they've had enough. They leave. What happened, Joseph?
I mean, you said what happened. I think overall this is great. Number one, as you mentioned, Sting doesn't come out, right? And that I think is really cool. The commentators start talking about that, and I love the work the three men do on this. His theory is, well, he's not coming out because he's scared, basically, which is exactly what you'd expect from a heel commentator. And I don't remember what Mongo's take is on it, but Eric Bischoff, because I think Mongo is a little bit lost too. Like he's still kind of getting his feet wet. I do like Mongo on commentary. I'm very surprised to say that. I think that's blasphemy in WCW fans. I think he's fine. I think he adds a nice touch. But Eric Bischoff does a really good job, and then Mongo kind of starts catching on. Does a really good job of saying, well, because of how much he's gotten stabbed in the back, he is probably wanting Flair to prove that he actually needs his help and prove that he's really the man of his word by letting him go out and fight first. And then he'll see, has he really turned over a new leaf? I think it's a really good job by the commentary team, because they're debating it for a long time until Sting does eventually come out. And Flair versus the World is so good. I mean, him versus both of them. It's so fun watching him do it. There's a moment where he does the figure four on both. He has Arn, and then Brian Pillman runs the ring, and he sees Brian Pillman running in, and he immediately gets out of it and then grabs Brian Pillman down and gets him in the figure four. It's so fun. But yeah, eventually Sting comes in. He's wearing red and black face paint with red and black gear. It's an A+. It looks great. His roots are starting to get even further. And then the crowd loves Sting. They're so hot for this, as I think they should be. And then obviously, I think, as you mentioned, the Arn and Pillman decide that they're done with this. They're not going to do it, and they leave. And so they get counted out for leaving. I give the grade an A. I kind of would have liked to have had a clean finish, but I will say, because this is TV, you are trying to sell tickets and sell pay-per-view buys. So obviously you want to save, the supposed climax to this rivalry for your pay-per-view. So I get it. But it's a lot of fun. It gets an A from me.
We had two great teases for Halloween Havoc tonight. We had the Johnny B. Bad DDP non-match that I thought was a great tease for their match at Halloween Havoc. And I thought the Ric Flair Sting versus Arn and Pillman was a great tease for their match at Halloween Havoc. And then after we end the night with Okerlund, Mean Gene, talking with Flair and Sting. Sting says that, he really saw a change of heart in Flair there. He really admires Flair for having the guts to go into that match by himself and fight those two guys by himself. And that's why he came and helped. They give each other a high five. It's a beautiful thing. And they are ready for Halloween Havoc.
It's a complete A for me. Overall, the show gets a B+ for me. I think, even though there were some lows, I think the highs are really, really high, and there's definitely more of them. I think it's a really fun show. Also, I genuinely believe here that anything can happen in WCW. Like, if I'm just watching it, there's been so many perfect swerves and new rivalries started and new alliances formed and things where you're not seeing the same old, and you're seeing that anything can happen in WCW.
Yeah, Sting and Ric Flair are mortal enemies. And now they're together and they're facing Ric Flair's old buddy, Arn Anderson, with Brian Pillman. Who would have thought? What a crazy night. But the insanity continues, Joseph, and not in a good way. Because we're going into WWF Raw, baby. It's October 16th, 1995, Grand Center, Grand Rapids, Michigan. I believe this is the same place we were here last week, and we've been in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area for a couple of weeks now. The show opens. Isaac Yankem. We got Isaac Yankem, Bret Hart, Jerry Lawler. They're all talking about the cage match main event. We get a caveat. If Lawler gets involved in that match, he's getting put in a smaller cage next to the main cage. Tell me about it, Joseph.
Okay, so I actually wrote down each of these promos because I think they need to be talked about. So Isaac Yankem starts, and then Bret Hart, and then Jerry the King Lawler. Isaac Yankem starts by saying, I'm going to apply the biggest set of braces in the history of the World Wrestling Federation to your teeth. That's his promo. That's the complete promo. Then Bret Hart comes on and he says, Dr. Isaac Yankem, DDS, and Jerry the King Lawler, you've both respectively, or you're both respectively the tartar and the abscess of the World Wrestling Federation. And tonight, inside this 15-foot steel cage, I am going to be your personal hygienist. That's the end of his promo. Your personal hygienist, and then
probably delivered just as deadpan as you just delivered.
Yeah, no, it really is. And then Jerry says, Bret Hart, tonight Isaac Yankem is going to cure your gingivitis and overbite. When he gets through with you, you're going to look like your trench mouth mother. And I know his victory is under lock and key, which is a teaser for later on in the episode. Those are all three promos. I give this segment a B question mark, because I genuinely don't know if this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen or the best or both.
And what a hot start to the night that was. I'm surprised you gave it a B because
I gave it a B question mark.
okay,
That is the exact grade because I don't know what to make of this.
B question mark. I think that's even too generous. But it also could be that I hate Dr. Isaac Yankem and
Well, you
nothing
do.
will persuade me to like him because it's just
He,
bad.
he is 100% your Disco Inferno. But I will say, though, one of the things I really liked for like the 3 months that AEW Collision was good was the fact, and I know you never watched it, but they started each episode kind of like this, like, you know, how they do recaps at the beginning of episodes. So I kind of like it because it's like, oh, yeah, this is the rivalry, but it's also really bad, but also kind of good. I don't know, man. I don't know what to make. Let's just move on. I don't know.
Well, don't worry, Joseph. It gets better. We have Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Doink the Clown. During the match, Vince announces that The Undertaker has received a quote unquote crushed face, and Hunter Hearst Helmsley defeats Doink the Clown in a 3-minute, 50-second match. Give me the play by play, Joseph.
So an interesting kind of fact on this is not the original Doink the Clown. I don't know if you were aware that there were multiple. I know a lot of people who listen to this will probably go, oh yeah, we all knew that. But at this point, it is not the original Doink the Clown. This is Steve Lombardi, aka the Brooklyn Brawler. Every once in a while, he would kind of, I guess, moonlight as Doink the Clown. And especially because you have all the makeup on, you can't really see that it's him. The original Doink the Clown was Matt Osborne. And unfortunately, he and the WWF kind of had a bit of a falling out. I think they were able to clear things up a little bit later on in his career. So there's some, he had unfortunately a very kind of trying life. He's no longer with us, but he did the original Joint the Clown was very much a villain, I believe, and he did. To my understanding, a lot of people love the work he did. By this point, he's really just kind of a comedy character. And I think this version is not as highly sought after as other versions. So I think you kind of see that in this. You know, there's a moment where Helmsley sprays perfume around and Vince says that it smells like insecticide. I thought it was kind of funny. I thought it was, you know, from both of them, I thought the Helmsley spraying it was funny. And I thought Vince's response to it was funny. Vince and Jerry briefly mentioned Shawn Michaels' nightclub incident, which I believe they say they're going to talk about later on. And Jerry's really like, he wants to give the news. He's so excited because, again, Jerry's a heel. And then they mention that Helmsley will face Fatu at In Your House 4. So they kind of mention that. And then Helmsley wins with the pedigree, which I do believe is the right call. I think this has been his second match on Raw so far. They're clearly kind of pushing him forward as not a main eventer, but like a solid, this is one of the guys of the mid card. And I think that's fine. Overall, I give it a C. It's not good. It's not bad. There's nothing really wrong with it. It's a bit of a squash match. I like Helmsley's kind of character work. He's still kind of figuring it out. He's never really done this character solo. So he's kind of figuring it out, and he'll do some things that are better and worse as time goes on. I think it's fine. How about you?
I thought the match was fine. Despite my joking at the beginning, I thought the match was fine. There's really no problem with it. I thought they both presented. I thought they presented well. I thought it was good back and forth. I mean, I think we kind of knew that Doink was gonna lose, and he does. But it is what it is. Doink, at least at this point, I think is kind of it's a low point for the Doink the Clown character. And in fact, I think this is the last time we see Doink the Clown on a WWF Raw, or at least for quite a while. So that's that. But yeah, the match was fine. But after the match, we go backstage and we see Barry Horowitz, and he's teaching Hakushi about baseball, Joseph. And I bet you have some thoughts about this segment.
I do. So this is essentially the Americanization of Hakushi. I think they may even say that. I don't remember. I don't remember if that was my phrase or if that was their phrase. I have no idea. But Barry Horowitz asks Hakushi who the best home run hitter of all time is. And then he drops a few hints, and he's very clearly referencing Babe Ruth, at which point Hakushi interrupts him and says, no, Hank Aaron. And I will say, and then Barry Horowitz says, you're absolutely right, and hugs him. And I will say, Hakushi is absolutely right. At this point in time in 1995, that is the best home run hitter of all time. That all being said, this is a bad segment, and it gets a D.
Well, there you have it. Yeah, I got nothing more to say about it. It was whatever. I don't know. It's WWF Raw in 1995. That's all I can say. Up next, though, we have the Tag Team Championship match. We've got the Smokin' Guns, Bart and Billy Gunn versus, again, the folks from PG-13, JC Ice and Wolfie D. During the match, we go split screen to Gorilla Monsoon, who's forcing Yokozuna to fill in for The Undertaker versus King Mabel at In Your House. And Jerry Lawler brings up the Syracuse incident with Shawn Michaels. Go into it, Joseph.
Okay, I guess we'll talk about the incident first because we can kind of move on into the match and then move on to the rest of it. So the incident is real. It's a true thing. There's been a lot of different reports as to what exactly happened. The best that can be figured is that Shawn Michaels was out at a bar in Syracuse. He was apparently with 123 Kid, who he was really good friends with, and British Bulldog, who he was actually pretty decent acquaintances with. I don't know if they were really good friends. I don't know their complete dynamic, but they were all hanging out and they're getting wasted and stuff. And then the stories vary on how many people there were, but apparently he was hitting on a woman, and her ex-boyfriend did not like that. She did not have a problem with it, but the ex-boyfriend had a problem with it, and eventually apparently dragged him out of a car, and they all started beating the crap out of him. And apparently 123 Kid and Davey Boy Smith, aka the British Bulldog, were apparently in the back seat of a very, very tight car. And it was one of those cars where like you have to put the seats down in front to get out of the back. So they were in the back seat when he got pulled out. And apparently it was her car. It was actually her car because they were all going to go to her place. And he got pulled out and they beat the crap out of him, and they couldn't get out of the car in enough time to like help him out. So he's completely, beat to hell. He did go to the hospital. There's been reports of, it was 4 people. There's been reports of it's 9 people. I want to say there was ridiculous when it was 15 people. I think the understanding for the most part is 9 people. And then Marty Jannetty says it was actually just 1 person because at this point, I think Marty Jannetty was just so in his feelings. So I wouldn't take anything Marty Jannetty says as truth anyway. So there you go. But it was a real incident, and it would lead to kind of not really necessarily. It would lead to some scrambling from WWF on what they need to do, because he actually is real life hurt right now. I think he had a concussion at the time. We'll see him soon, and you can see he's absolutely beat to hell. So it's an unfortunate situation, and that is real. So the report earlier that we mentioned that Mean Gene was saying in the WCW episode, this is who they're talking about. So one thing I really hate about that, and I think I can talk about that now, is that number one, you're basically saying a fan beat him up in a parking lot at an event. So you're lying to the audience, which there were police reports. There were evidence to say, like, you could at least tell the truth about it, And 2, you're making light of what is actually a very real situation and a very unfortunate one. Now, I'm not saying that Shawn Michaels in 1995 probably didn't say something that also, helped increase the likelihood of, getting beat up, because he was very, brazen at the time. But there it is. So that's actually what happened. And then I think now I'll just go into the match.
Do it.
All right. So PG-13, I actually made a huge mistake when I was taking the notes for this. I decided that this was going to be the night that I was going to write down all of the word for word promos everybody gives. And then I did the whole beginning, Dr. Isaac Yankem and Bret Hart and Jerry. And by that point, I was already burnt out. So by the time I get to this one, PG-13 gives a promo. I didn't care enough to write the whole thing down. But what I did write down is I believe they end this with these two punks from the hood. Again, this is PG-13. These two punks from the hood are coming to lasso you. That's the end. That's kind of the end of the promo. It's not a great promo. Also, you guys are not from the hood. No one thinks you are. It's really bad. Gorilla Monsoon announces right before this that Yokozuna will be the man to face Mabel at In Your House 4, replacing the Undertaker, who is hurt because Mabel actually hurt him in real life. JC Ice in this match dances around the ring only to get clotheslined, which is a cool spot, but he does it twice in a row. Because like the whole idea is like I'm gonna dance around and like I'm so big, and then all of a sudden I turn and then wham, I get clotheslined because I was being chauvinistic. But he does it back to back, and it's really not very good. Billy Gunn does have a nice slingshot in this, and then the Smoking Guns win with a sidewinder. And I think the match itself is okay. It gets a C for me, but there's nothing good going on right now. So it's just a C overall.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the match. I don't feel like. I mean, Bart Gunn and Billy Gunn are good wrestlers, and honestly, I think PG-13 are pretty good wrestlers. They do what they need to do. I mean, obviously, they're there to lose, and I think they sell it really well. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. As we've discussed before, don't love the characters, don't buy that they're these rough and tumble gangsters like thugs or punks or whatever they say. I just don't buy it. I've given my thoughts on both of these teams previously, so I don't really think we need to go into detail on that. And then overall, it's just I thought the match was fine. The Guns retained the titles as we knew they would. That's pretty much it. But it's not it for the night, because we still got a couple of matches to go through here. God help us. After that, we're shown an interview from over the weekend with British Bulldog and Jim Cornette. Doc Hendricks is talking to them. They're talking about how Bulldog turned on Diesel and pinned him in the ring. And he's going to make everyone respect him at In Your House. Joseph, what do you think about this promo?
Production-wise, it looks pretty good. But I think they were just recording a live show, but they filmed this bit. And so there's actually, I think this is overall really good. I really enjoy what Jim Cornette does here. This rivalry hasn't really made too much sense. Again, as you mentioned, British Bulldog did go heel, and actually the person he went heel on was Diesel. But they really haven't done anything to kind of connect the dots. So in this promo, Jim Cornette outlines exactly why this situation is the way it is. He basically breaks down the entire plot line of the British Bulldog's plan for the last few months, and why he turned heel and why he's been kind of setting the stage for this match. Almost he's making it sound like British Bulldog is way more calculated than he actually was. I think this is a situation where they were just kind of on the seat of their pants booking these things, and then went, okay, Cornette, please just go make it work. And he did. He did a great job. I did write down here, and again, because by this point I was just burnt out on promos, he does say, do you think in your wildest dreams that anything will stop him from achieving his goal? And I think that's a great cap off to Jim Cornette's portion of the promo. It's a great bit. And then Doc Hendricks insinuates that Yokozuna's leg drop actually helped British Bulldog win the last week, and that's why British Bulldog wins. And then to your point earlier, British Bulldog says this is a lack of respect, and then British Bulldog's portion of the promo isn't too great. Overall, I give it a B. I think it's a really fun segment. I think it ties everything together nicely and gives you some sort of hope for a great pay-per-view. And I think that's as good as Cornette can do with the situation at hand.
I've never disliked a Jim Cornette promo, at least yet in our watch. And, again, we've talked about this before, but I think Jim Cornette is one of the best in the business at what he does, about being a manager, about just doing these fire promos. This is how you string together just nonsense and make it coherent, because Jim Cornette did it somehow, and he did a great job. You're right, Bulldog's Bulldog. I don't think Bulldog's really all that great on the mic ever. He has some good promos, but for the most part, not his best effort. But Jim Cornette going Jim Cornette, and Jim Cornetted. And that's how I feel about that. But how do you feel about the next promo, Joseph? Because we got Ahmed Johnson, and he's talking about honor, I think, and a woman making minimum wage,
Well, all right. Look, I'll just go to take this over
and
because
kids need to do well in school, and
at
if your
this
mother can
point,
find $7-8 for a,
at this, no,
you
I got it. I
gotta
got
stay
it.
in
I
school,
got it.
man.
I got it. Okay, look, I'll take this. Okay, so at this point in this episode, I said no because Cornette really rejuvenated me with a fire promo. So I said, Joseph, you're better than this. You disrespected Jim Cornette. You're not going to do the same thing to Ahmed Johnson. You need to write down this promo. So I did. So this is Ahmed Johnson on honor, him discussing honor. Ahmed Johnson says, honor is when you watch your mother go to work every day making minimum wage. Okay, I'm with you so far. Although you know in your heart she is not a minimum wage woman, but yet she's making minimum wage. But then she can find that $5-8 that it take to take you to a WWF event. And then you look at her and you say, Mama, I appreciate that. So you go to school the next day and you do the best you can for her and yourself. That's honor. And I give this segment the second B question mark of the show because I don't know what the hell just happened. I don't know how this is talking about honor. I was thoroughly entertained. I don't think for the right reasons. So it gets a B question mark.
Unlike the opening segment of the night where I disagreed with you on your B question mark, this was ridiculously stupid and it made no sense. And that's why I loved it. I rewatched it a couple of times. I didn't take the notes that you took. I just kind of took the quick notes, but I did rewind this a couple of times because I wasn't sure what was going on. And I laughed harder every time.
I think somebody said, we're going to just let you speak from the heart. And he did. But man, this is one of those things where somebody should have written this for him. Just like you, I watched it the first time and I was like, oh, this will probably be a quick segment. I don't need to write this down. I'll just hit the notes. And then I went, what the hell did I just watch? So I rewatched it and I still didn't know. So I said, I have to write down every single thing he just said to see if I can make sense of this. And I have, and I've read it multiple times, written down like a script, and I don't know what just happened.
It's a beautiful thing. But Joseph, is it as beautiful as our next match where we have Dean Douglas and Joe Dorgan? I guess I'm not going to beat around the bush here. Dean Douglas defeats this guy. It's a 2-minute, 7-second match. During the match, though, Vince tells us that Dean Douglas is still going to wrestle Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental belt at In Your House. They talk about the Syracuse incident again, and we go to Shawn Michaels on the telephone from San Antonio. He's beat up pretty bad, but he is going to wrestle, although he tells us it might not be his best effort. Tell me about all of this, Joseph.
Well, you often love to use the term peak and in reference to specific things. So you'll say, like, if Flair gives a great promo, you'll say that's peak Flair, right? This right here is peak 90s because the phone in with the horrible, horrible phone in audio where you can almost not hear exactly what he's saying is absolutely peak 90s. And I love it. The match itself, Joe Dorgan is just somebody they picked up off the street. He's not anybody relevant, they do this, right? They'll just, a local talent, as they'll call them. It's a squash match. The match it gets a D for me. It doesn't do anything for Dean. I think they, obviously with what happened, they probably had to pivot and try to figure out how to make this all work. It just gets a D. There's nothing great about it. I don't hate anything. I just don't, there's nothing that I can't even give it like a real positive at any point.
But yeah, they're trying to figure out what to do here. Clearly, they have no idea what to do. After that, though, we have a vignette from Gold Dust. Joseph, tell me.
Yeah, it's a real quick vignette. It's very simple. He says, and I did actually write this down because it is very quick, so it was not hard to write down. Marty Jannetty, teen idol. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Because you see, pretty boy, when I come in your house, you're in for a major makeover, courtesy of Gold Dust. I think, look, he does a lot of movie references. It's a Gone with the Wind reference. I love the film Gone with the Wind. This is absolutely like we saw Goldust a few weeks ago, before his In Your House 3 match, and we kind of were like, hey, you're so close, but you're not quite there. This is Goldust. Like, this is him. Oh no, he wasn't in Your House 3. No, this is gonna be his first match, huh? In Your House 4. That
Yep.
I'll correct myself. So we'll see him there looking like Goldust, but this really is like the first time he looks like Goldust, and he's doing everything the way Goldust does. I mean, top to bottom. It looks great. Overall, it gets a B for me. It's nothing amazing. It's very quick, very crisp and to the point. I like it. Gets a B.
I'm just so impressed with how close he already is to being the Goldust we know and love. It's, he got into the character really fast and does really well with it. And I thought this was just another example of good Goldust vignette. After that, though, we have another promo. This time we have Paul Bearer. Tell me about it, Joseph.
That was really good, man. I like that.
Thank you very much.
I don't actually have much to say about this. It's another very quick. They're just kind of setting up. I think at this point, they're setting up the cage is what they're doing. So they're just kind of putting these vignettes in here real quickly, just like move along some storylines. Basically, Paul Bearer's whole promo is about the fact that that Undertaker is now brutally disfigured because his face does have a giant facial fracture. He is actually dealing with that. So he's brutally disfigured. And when you finally see him again, he won't be the same Undertaker. And I think he does a very good job. Overall, the promo gets an A from me, but he does ensure the fan base, you will be seeing the Undertaker again, and he will absolutely right all the wrongs that were done to him. It's very simple. It's to the point. It's got the voice. I love it. It gets an A.
I guess we'll just have to take Paul's word for it, because I feel like getting your face crushed is kind of like a neck snap thing that you just don't come back from. But let's hope for the best here. Let's see. But as you mentioned, they needed some time to construct the steel cage, and it has been constructed. And we are ready for our main event, Bret Hart versus Dr. Isaac Yankem. As mentioned at the beginning of Raw, there was some foreshadowing there. Jerry Lawler has switched the locks, so Bret Hart can't get in. He's got to climb. Jerry Lawler meets him at the top, and Bret punches him back down to the mat. Gorilla comes out. Lawler has violated the terms of the match. And Lawler's thrown in the cage. Lawler says he's getting a nosebleed, even though he's maybe 25 feet off the ground. Lawler tosses Yankem the key to unlock the cage, but Bret punches Yankem, it looked like in the balls, and retrieves the key, but still ends up climbing out of the cage anyways. Bret Hart defeats Dr. Isaac Yankem in a 16-minute match. Give me the details, Joseph.
So I know that you're probably going to grade this very negatively. I didn't grade it very high. Don't worry. So, there's a few things that happen. Obviously, you mentioned that, he switched the locks. I thought that worked based off the earlier promo. That was like, he alludes to it a number of times through the night. I've got this match under lock and key, and that's the reference. And I think Vince McMahon goes, oh, that's what he meant by under lock and key. And it's like, okay, whatever. And then at one point in the match, actually just smack dab in the middle of the ring. And I love when wrestlers do this, because the at least in this match, you can only win by escaping the cage. There are some cage matches where you can win by pinfall or submission, but in this one, you can only win by escaping the cage. And in the middle of the ring, Bret Hart hits the Scorpion Deathlock, and it looks freaking gorgeous. It's so good. And then, like you said, Lawler gets caged, ends up getting caged. There is a DDS in the middle of the ring. And then, he tosses the key. Bret Hart hits a bulldog and exits the cage with the key, and he wins. Overall, from a purely in-ring perspective, and also from a character perspective, I think Jerry Lawler does actually a really good job in this match. He, when he's saying he's going to get a nosebleed, he's going to get a nosebleed, and then his nose actually does start bleeding because they use like a capsule or something. It's really, really fun. Like, that segment is really, really fun. The in-ring action is actually very nice and crisp. I think Bret Hart does a good job. I think that Isaac Yankem, from an in-ring perspective, does a good job. They don't really work with the cage the way I would like to see a cage work, but also cage matches are not super defined by this point. In fact, this cage doesn't look anything like a cage they'll start having later on. So there's kind of a bit of problem with that. Like, they're not using the cage as a weapon, which I kind of think you should in a cage match. But again, early in the years of cage matches. Overall, the segment gets a C+ for me, because I don't think, as far as a standalone segment goes, I don't think there's anything wrong with what happened here. I don't think it was great. I don't think it was bad. I think it was a little bit better than okay. So I gave it a C+. But I do have a note here that I forgot I wrote, which is this feud finally over? And I hope it is.
You're going to be surprised, because I did not hate this. I thought it was okay. I think you're right. The best part of it was Jerry Lawler. Surprisingly, I thought he was really fun in the little cage, complaining the whole time, just kind of dangling in this little man-sized cage, kind of off to the side, and about the nosebleed and all those sorts of things. I thought that was pretty amusing. As you said, the in-ring action was fine. Bret Hart obviously is one of the best technical wrestlers that's ever lived. He does what he needs to do. He puts Dr. Isaac Yankem at DDS in a great sharpshooter. And because there is no submission, he locks that thing on hard. Overall, they wrestled a very good match. As you know, I really don't like the Dr. Isaac Yankem character. I think it's a terrible gimmick. I hate everything about it. But for this match, I thought it was fine. I thought it was a good match. It seems like it should be the end. This was a main. I think, as far as the storyline goes, this is a main event, end of your story match. So God willing, it is the end. But I don't recall it being the end. I think Bret moves on to another dumb feud for a while, and then this comes back somehow.
And I genuinely don't remember. Like, as I was watching it, I just went, like, I started racking my brain, because in our personal watch, we're a little bit ahead of this, and I was going, like, does this continue? Please tell me this doesn't continue. Please tell me we're finally done. I genuinely can't remember.
It could just be that I'm traumatized, but I feel like we're not done with this. I think we drop it for a little while, and then it comes back. But let's hope it does.
Some say they're still feuding to this day.
So let's hope, as we're getting close to the end of 1995, we're going to see that light at the end of the tunnel for Bret. But I don't think we're there yet. But we are there for the end of the night.
Overall, this show got a C for me, but I think we can go right into the Nielsen's. Or I guess we could talk about who we felt won. I think before we Nielsen's, I personally think this is a clear sweep WCW. I think head to toe, it was a much better program. There was so much confusing things going on Raw. Some of it unwatchable. I think WCW was just light years ahead.
I have nothing else to add. You are absolutely right. WCW won the night. I think there was very little down. There was some down in WCW, but very little. It was overall a pretty good night. What's the Nielsen for Raw, though, Joseph?
Nielsen for Raw this week is a 2.6, so they kind of bounced back.
And the Nielsen for WCW is 2.2.
Wow.
So WCW lost.
I guess they did have a cage match to end it, so maybe people were just hyped for that.
Yeah, I mean, Bret Hart in a cage, I guess it doesn't matter who Bret Hart's wrestling. Is Bret Hart in a cage? Maybe. I don't know. But that brings us to the end of the night, Joseph. Thanks for doing this with me.
Hey, I appreciate you. And before we go, Scott.
Oh, God.
Today's episode of the Monday Night Wars Radio Hour was brought to you by Viceroy Cigarettes. Kids, Do your parents always keep a pack of Viceroy cigarettes in the house? Well, we at Viceroy Cigarettes recommend you sneak a few, then buy a replacement pack at your local supermarket. That's right, Viceroy cigarettes are child-friendly and safe. Viceroy cigarettes, you won't regret us.
Please don't sue us if you still exist, Viceroy Cigarettes.
Hey everybody, it's Joseph. Did you like this podcast? Well, we hope that you did, and also that you join us every Monday for new episodes. You can listen to us on Spotify, and soon we'll explore other platforms to bring you episodes of the Monday Night Wars. Did you listen to this podcast and think, pretty sure they're wrong about that? Well, let us know. You can email us at mnwpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's mnwpodcast@gmail.com. And correct anything we messed up. Don't worry, you won't bruise our egos. You can also give us suggestions, follow the show, or even just reach out to us on the following platforms. On Twitter, you can reach us at MON Night Wars Pod. Again, MON Night Wars Pod. And on Instagram and Facebook, you can reach us at Monday Night Wars Podcast. And finally, if you feel like supporting this podcast and also getting bonus content, you can follow us on Patreon at Monday Night Wars Podcast. For the low price of $2 a month, you get every episode of the Monday Night Wars and also every breakdown of every WCW and WWF pay-per-view during this era, with more content to come. Again, and one last time, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. We'll see you next Monday back here on the Monday Night Wars podcast.